Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are back with the other two variants of the new Nanmu Giganotosaurus 2.0. We've got 2.0.2 and point .3, I guess, kind of, as far as these ones go. But you can see we basically have the greenish paint scheme version, as well as the somewhat reddish paint scheme version. And now the boxes are exactly the same as far as the artwork and everything goes. It's exactly as we had seen on the first release, but this time, of course, we have, the paint variants that are included in the boxes on the front of the box rather than the original Dominion style paint job. And then as far as the other parts of the box go, you've also, of course, got the, underside of the box here where it shows images of the figure contained within, just like we had seen on the original version, but of course, again, in the color schemes that are in these boxes. And then again, same thing here for the back of the box. As you can see again, what the rear of the box looks like. Same angle and everything as far as the image goes, just the different paint scheme variants that we have here to take a look at today. So without further ado, let's pop these out of the boxes and check them out. So here is the kind of reddish version, although it's not entirely red, just has some red on its head. And then we've also got the greenish version, and I don't know how to put them in here because the tail curves toward my backdrop, so it's kind of complicated to get them in here in a nice way where we could see both of them. So there we go, we can kind of see them a little bit better. And interestingly enough, in the first review, I didn't even realize that I didn't have, well, that's upside down, but I didn't have the art card. And I now have to go back in the box and see if the art card was included because I honestly did not see it anywhere in the packaging. But you could see again, just like with the recent Spinosaurus, we have the different paint variants that appear on the front of the art card as well, which is really cool. And then here on the back, same deal for both art cards. You can see that we have those kind of hand-drawn images, which I am a gigantic fan of. Absolutely love that stuff. But actually having both of the Giganotosaurus now here, the two alternate versions, they look really, really good. Like, Nanmu always does a great job. And honestly, that's one of the reasons why I usually end up purchasing all of the different paint variants, because it's so hard to actually pick just one. Like, I always want to pick the more screen accurate paint scheme, what you actually see in the films, but then they always make such really beautiful repaints that you just can't help but want to own those as well. It's sometimes just way too hard to actually choose one paint scheme over another, and this is a great example of that because each and every one of these Giganotosaurus from Nanmu all look fantastic as far as their color schemes go. Very nice and natural overall. So let's jump straight to a closer look at these two alternate versions of the Giganotosaurus. So we will begin with the greenish version. Now you can see here, looking at the face, we have some really, really nice looking, very naturalistic greens for the face of the Giganotosaurus. You can also see that we have some blacks that kind of lead down from the upper part of the head, and they have some pretty wide stripes that stripe through the face, stripe through the snout, the palate, and even into the nostril area. And you can see those blacks do lead down here to the lower jaw. You can kind of see them striped down there into the lower jaw. They also follow along the jawline. We've got some nice light dry brushing down here on the lower jaw as well, just for a little extra color variation. And then as you lead back up here, you can see the eye, as per usual, is really nicely detailed, very nicely painted, really realistic looking, and of course it includes that nice gloss coat. The entire face kind of has a bit of a shine to it though, almost like a slight satin shine, which is something that you don't usually see on Nanmu models, but I think it looks pretty decent on this one. The nostrils, of course, are darkened, so you have that nice area of coloration that highlights the nostrils themselves. The inside of the mouth has a nice realistic tone of color, quite a bit different from what we had seen on the initial version of the Giganotosaurus, kind of like a light pinkish sort of a tone, or maybe even more of like a flesh tone, but there also does seem to be a wash, like maybe a reddish wash of some kind there on the inside of the mouth. You can see the same type of coloration here on the skin here where it's stretching with the mouth open, and look at how nice that looks. Really nice paintwork there for the inside of the mouth. You can definitely take notice to that reddish wash now there on the inside of the mouth. Nice gloss coat as well, as always, for the inside of the mouth. And then you can get a good look at what the paintwork looks like up here on the top of the head. Again, I love how there's just like sporadic greens popping up here through the black areas. And then as we start to move back here into the neck of the Giganotosaurus, you see more of that kind of striping and patterning as you move down. Also more of those greenish tones. And then leading down further, once you actually reach down here into the body, one thing that I'm noticing is you really start to pick up on a lot of different color variation. You can see that there, of course, are these greenish tones that we see through the majority of the body, but there's also some variation of those greens, and there's also some browns popping up, and there's also some light kind of off-white dry brushing, it looks like. So there is definitely a ton of color variation on this one. Definitely a lot of really nice, very appealing to the eye coloration. You can also see more of the blacks and everything leading down from the upper side. You can see as they kind of trade places here, moving down the course of those large spines, those ridges moving down the back of the dinosaur. You can see like the darker green, then you can see the blacks, and then you have a light tone of color there, kind of like a light, almost like a brownish variation. Then you've got blacks, then greens, and they do that as you move down through the course of the ridges there on the back of the dinosaur. But you can also see more of those kind of blacks and stuff down here on the side of the dinosaur, like really nice, very subtle spots have been added, and you see more of that moving down into the arm as you see like spots and kind of stripes and stuff. And then as you lead down into the hands, you can see the hands darken. That black really overtakes the hand, and there's also that nice light tone, kind of like a light gray that's been added in a wash sort of a fashion to highlight the detail, if my camera would focus on it, to highlight the detail quite nicely. We again have the very nicely painted nails. They as well have a nice gloss coat added to them. And then as you move back up here, you continue to see more of that, patterning moving down. You also have more of the designing down here as you have some like very small spots and stuff and slight striping moving down. You can also again see tons of color variation like we had seen up there in the stomach region, with the different variations of greens, off-whites, browns, all sorts of color variation in their super, super smooth application as well. It looks extremely realistic. And then as you move down, you can see that the entire front of the leg is kind of overtaken with that black, and we also have that light gray, sort of a wash in there to highlight all of the detail, and that continues to run all the way down into that really nice foot sculpt. Again, you can see that the darker tones overtake the tops of the toes, especially in the scoot area, but you do still have some of the variation of greens and browns on the underside of the feet and the lower parts of the toes. Man, look at how good the paintwork is on this. It is absolutely phenomenal. The toes as well are painted again with some really nice blackish tones, and then you also have kind of like looks like maybe a brownish sort of a dry brushing or something that's been added to really highlight the detail. And then of course again, that gloss coat. And then as you move up here, you continue to see pretty much the same thing. And what I really do like about this is when you look at this in the initial images, it almost looked like it was just kind of like the same patterning that you see through the Dominion style version, but different tones of color used. But that's actually not the case at all. I can definitely see quite a bit of different shaping when it comes to the patterns, and you can really see that here moving back into the tail. You can see lots of that kind of lighter tone, but again, the pattern of the darker tones leading down is quite a bit different from what we saw in the Dominion style version. And as you continue to move down the tail, we get this really flashy area of coloration as you reach the tip, where we have almost like a silver sort of a color showing up out there toward the tip of the tail, just to add a nice element of flashiness out there at the end of the tail, which I think looks really, really cool. And then here on the underside, again, look at all the color. There is just color for days here on the underside of the figure, as you have variations of yellows, browns, and even greens moving along the underside of the Giganotosaurus, as well as again off-whites. You can see some of that here as you continue to move along. Really, really beautiful paintwork. Like, they definitely highlighted the detail in the best and most realistic way possible. And then if you come over here to the opposing side, you can again see pretty much the same thing. You're not really going to see too much difference over here compared to what we had just seen on the initial side, but boy, does it look absolutely gorgeous. They really did a great job on the coloration of this one, and also again a great job of making it look like it really could be the coloration of a Giganotosaurus, like very naturalistic tones overall, because it has that nice kind of element of flashiness to it, but all of the tones of green look like it could really be the color of this dinosaur. And I must say, if I were a herbivore living anywhere near this Giganotosaurus, I would really, really be uncomfortable pretty much on a constant 24/7 basis, because this dinosaur could easily hide within the, tree line or something like that, and I would probably not see it because of how good those greens are. So definitely a really nice, again, very naturalistic color chosen for the Giganotosaurus from Nanmu. But we also have this version. And now this version has kind of like the reddish sort of a look. It almost, when you look at the face, it almost kind of reminds me of the older V-Rex, the alternate paint scheme of the V-Rex that Nanmu had released quite a ways back. But you can see again, we have quite a bit of color variation moving through the face. We've got the dark tones, just like we saw in the greenish version, with those kind of like very dark grays or blacks that kind of stripe down. The stripes are a lot thinner and come to a point more so on this one compared to the striping that we saw on the greenish version. We have again some more of that darker coloration running along the jawline. You've got some nice variations of greens and browns as you move throughout, but you also have this gorgeous reddish tone that moves up through the face, making it look, in my opinion, kind of like a very intimidating male Giganotosaurus with that reddish coloration. And you can see the eyes are again painted really nicely, given that nice greenish tone, similar to what we see on the more Dominion style version, which I also really quite like. You can see we've also got that nice light gray wash up here on the top, highlighting all of the detail, but you can also see some of the reds poking up and stuff up here, which looks really cool. They definitely did a very good job of applying the reds, and I love that as you move down the neck, you continue to see those reddish tones, and they do run up here into the back a little ways, but then they taper off and they're gone. Like, you don't see those for the rest of the body, so I really like how they've kind of highlighted the, a little area of the back, but mostly the neck and face with those reddish tones. We've also got a similar tone of color for the inside of the mouth to the greenish one, but I think the reddish wash is a bit more intense on this one because you can really make out the reddish wash a good bit more. Maybe it's a slightly different tone of color for the inside of the mouth, but mostly it looks similar to me. And you can again see, look at that reddish wash is really impressive on the inside of the mouth of this one, really highlighting the detail again perfectly. And they always, of course, have those super realistic looking teeth where they just look like real, genuine, living animals' teeth. They're that impressive looking. Nanmu, in my opinion, have the most realistic teeth on any dinosaur models currently being produced. But as you move down the course of the neck, you see more of those reds again showing up here in the ridges and everything, and also in the back of the neck, and they just kind of blend with the very dark grayish tones or blackish tones that we have up there, and it looks really cool. And they've also kind of applied them almost in like a wash-like fashion where you can sort of see them creeping in and out of all of those scoots moving down the back of the neck. You also see the darker tones striping down here as you move down the course of the neck, and that continues as you move down. You can see more of that striping leading down as the entire upper side is more of that darker tone, but you can see again there's been a nice light wash added, really highlighting the detail. And we also have some color variation up here in the ridges as we have like some brownish and greenish tones picking up there. And then as you move down, you have again some brownish and greenish tones here for the side of the dinosaur. You have more of those kind of spots and stuff, similar to what we saw on the greenish version, but a good bit different at the same time. And then as you move down, you can see that we don't really darken the hands or anything too much, but we do have a nice dry brushing over the scoots and everything here on the hands to highlight those very nicely. Very nice dark tones for the nails as well. And then as you move back up here, I really love the design that they have as far as the patterning with the darker tones and how it runs down. And I love the way it looks here out onto the tail. I think this design looks closer to the Dominion style Giganotosaurus as far as the way that the darker tones appear, more so than what we saw in the greenish version, but it looks really, really cool. We also have more of those dark tones moving down the front of the leg, and you can see that there, leading down the course of the shin. Again, also that nice kind of a light wash that's been applied. I love that they keep applying that mostly to the darker areas to really make those areas pop. Same deal again as far as the coloration goes for the feet, where we do darken on the tops of the toes, and then the undersides of the toes have more of that kind of primary body color, but also again the dark coloration for the nails, the nice gloss coat. And then as we move back up here, it almost looks like we get a little bit of a darker tone of like brown and green kind of moving out into the tail, while we see those darker tones kind of stripe and design and pattern pretty much everywhere as you lead out the length of the tail with that kind of really nice striping effect moving down. It looks super, super cool. We also have some lighter tones here for the underside of the dinosaur. Not quite as much variation of color as what we had seen on the underside of the green one, but still really, really nice. Very naturalistic. Again, paintwork for this Giga. And then you can also see again pretty much the same thing over here on the opposing side. You're not really going to see too much difference over here any more so than what we had just seen on the initial side, which is good because that means that, again, the paintwork is very nice and precise. Looks like we have some more of those reddish tones kind of leading back a little bit further on this side, more so than what we see on the initial side. I think I really like that coloration over here. Almost looks like orangish tones, actually, that's been kind of applied with like a watered down paint, kind of almost like a wash-like paint. Looks really cool. Definitely pops very nicely up there. And again, all of the same type of coloration that we saw primarily for the body on the initial side is what you see over here. I can actually almost make out some of the reddish tones in the thigh back here, which is something we didn't really see on the initial side. But it looks super, super cool. Another really nice, really naturalistic paint scheme from Nanmu for their Giganotosaurus. This is technically the 5th Giganotosaurus that they've released, because there are 3 different variants of this version, the Dominion style version, and there's also 2 different variants of the previously released original Giganotosaurus from Nanmu. But yet again, this is another fantastic paint variant of this Dominion style Giganotosaurus. Now, we don't really need to measure them or anything like that. We did measure the original Giganotosaurus, which these are all exactly the same sculpt. There's no difference in the sculpt at all between each version, just different paint jobs, and you can definitely see, again, pretty much the same thing looking at them there as far as the sculpt goes. So we don't really need to remeasure them or anything like that. I don't feel like we need to do any size comparisons or any of that stuff, but I will bring in the initial version, which is the more Dominion style paint scheme. Let's see if we can get them all somehow into frame here without knocking everything over. And there we go. There are all 3 different paint variants of the Giganotosaurus from Nanmu for the brand new Jurassic World Dominion style Giganotosaurus. And you might notice that 2 of the 3 don't have a base. Well, that's because this one, the Dominion style paint scheme, I did get a base for because this is the DX version. You can purchase DX versions for these 2. I chose not to because the base is exactly the same, but it's painted differently. And we have seen them do that in the past when it comes to the different Nanmu releases. And I didn't feel like I really needed repainted bases. I already have one base here for the original one. All I was really interested in otherwise was the actual dinosaurs, again, for the other paint variants. But you could, of course, purchase all 3 in the DX format so you can get the bases for all 3. But again, having all 3 now here finally together, they look so cool together. Definitely one incredible display if you happen to purchase all 3. So these brand new Nanmu Giganotosaurus 2.0 models are gorgeous. Each and every one is fantastic. Again, not everybody's a big fan of the Dominion style Giganotosaurus appearance, but I personally am a huge fan of it. I love it. So I think this model's really only going to cater to the people that really like the Dominion style Giganotosaurus, or the people that just aren't really worried about accuracy when it comes to actual accurate dinosaurs. But of course, if you are looking into a Nanmu product, you're probably already aware of the fact that they usually make their dinosaurs based off of pop culture, films and stuff like that, with like the V-Rex and now, of course, Jurassic World and Jurassic Park. So you should already be coming into the Giganotosaurus with the mindset of it's not going to look scientifically accurate. It's going to look like it does in Jurassic World Dominion. But as far as these particular versions go, again, they look pretty much identical to what you see in Jurassic World Dominion when it comes to the appearance of the Giganotosaurus. Nanmu did an excellent job as far as the screen accuracy department of the Giganotosaurus, and pretty much giving us a masterpiece when it comes to the actual Dominion Giganotosaurus. On top of that, we have 3 different paint variants this time around. We previously had taken a look at only one with the actual Dominion style paint scheme. This time we have 2 different paint variants with some gorgeous paint schemes. I love the greenish one. I think the greenish one might be one of the most naturalistic paint schemes I've seen on a Nanmu model. Like, they really, really nailed the overall coloration of it in an extremely natural way. Again, looking at this, I could absolutely see that being the coloration of an actual Giganotosaurus or even some other theropod. So great decision on Nanmu's part to paint that Giganotosaurus with those tones of color and that design. It looks really, really good, very naturalistic, and they've done a great job of applying many different tones of color to it. As you can see, all sorts of variations of greens and browns and off-whites moving through the course of the model, and it's all applied really naturally. They probably have some of the smoothest paintwork I've ever seen on dinosaur models right here with these Giganotosaurus. And on top of that, we also have that kind of reddish version, and I call it reddish even though there's only a small area of the dinosaur that has red, but the face is red and you have red moving down. It's actually more of like an orangish red, like a red-orange, moving down the course of the neck, and it just really makes it look, again, like a kind of intimidating male version of a Giganotosaurus. Definitely has that intimidating look with those reddish tones. Looks like the type of dinosaur you don't want to run into, on top of course, the very impressive looking design sculpt-wise, but the paint job is again nice and naturally applied, super smooth transitions, all sorts of really nice variation of color on that one as well, and again, it's all applied to perfection. Like, they did such a great job on the application of the paint and all of the striping and designing and patterning, and on top of that, the color transitions and the really nice washes they've used. They did a great job of applying those light washes to each and every one of the Giganotosaurus in this round of releases, and yet again, it has a nice element of realism and a nice element of flashiness, all combined in one, giving us potentially, I would say, 3 of Nanmu's best models ever right here with these Giganotosaurus. So, if you are interested in picking these up, or one or all, it's up to you. I will include a link in the description to where you can do that on Lana Time Shop, and you can grab yourself, again, whatever one of these 3 Giganotosaurus you are interested in. I honestly recommend every single one of them. You can't go wrong no matter which version you get. They're all awesome. So make sure you check the link in the description. Go grab yourself one or all of these Giganotosaurus, and also like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.